George Pickens of the Cowboys for a third-round pick next year and pick swap. So the Cowboys in search of a wide receiver in the draft. They get their number 2 alongside CeeDee Lamb, and they bring in Pickens as he enters the final year of his contract. Adam Schefter going to be standing by and joining us in minutes to give us other details. Oh, and with that, look who's feeling really good in May. Oh, he got some cobwebs on that jersey. It took him a while to bring it out of the closet, but Marcus Spears is feeling good and feeling happy. Am I just speaking for you, or are you going to just jump in with that smile and tell me how you feel about this trade?
Kev, I'm ecstatic, all right? People got to realize, all right, I'm not looking at the future. I'm not looking at the past. I'm looking at today. And I've been asking for 6 years for us to make a trade that I think is going to affect the team in a positive way. This is going to affect the team in a positive way. People trying to rain on my parade, telling me, oh, it's George Pickens, you got to see what he going to do. I don't care. On today, I'm happy we traded for a receiver that can play the position at a high level. We'll deal with all that later. Maybe I cry, maybe I laugh.
Hey, look, Marcus, look, man, you know, that's what's so great about the offseason. That's why the NFL is a 12-month-a-year proposition, right? Because even now, with no games being played, you feel like you've won. You feel like you've won. Cowboy Nation feels like they've won. And you know what? On paper, man, this is a real good look. It is. It makes sense. If you just look at this totally from a team-building standpoint on the field, this makes total sense. Big outside lane wide receiver who can make highlight reel contested catches down the field outside the numbers. Go along with CD, who's a three tool player. You know, a healthy Dak Prescott, Jayden Blue, Miles Sanders, Javonte Williams. You got a lot of things going for you. Right up until you start playing games and maybe things start going sideways. Right up until that point. But you know what?
Leave it at that.
Hey, you gotta shoot your shot. Exactly. You got to shoot your shot, ride the wave right now, go get your Cowboys gear, put your Cowboys jersey on, and just ride it. Let you live, Marcus. I'm going to let you live today.
Well,
I'm going to let you live today.
No. I do want to get your thoughts on that last comment, right? You're the best hype man for Marcus in the offseason. Why will it change in the regular season? Why will that jersey go back in the closet?
Don't do that.
Why?
Don't do that, Kel. Don't do that.
Well, you know what?
Don't do that to me, y'all.
There's no telling. The question is this, though. Here's the thing in all seriousness, and I know we're going to have a lot of fun with this over the next couple of months. But the question is this. Look, everyone on the outside of the Cowboys organization, Brian Schottenheimer, the new head coach, inside the organization has talked about the fact that it's about culture, and we know that it is. We know that it's about some kind of relative harmony within a locker room where everyone's kind of rowing in the same direction. Can they get George to do those kinds of things that clearly Pittsburgh said, you know what, it's too big of a risk for us to go ahead and commit to him and DK Metcalf, given what we know about the young man and how he rows in the same direction, or rather his challenges as far as being able to row in the same direction as the rest of the organization here in Pittsburgh. Can Dallas get that out of him? We'll see.
I promise. We're going to get to Graz in a second to get his thoughts. Let's bring in Adam Schefter, our NFL insider. Schefter, how did this deal come together? What other details do you have about the Steelers and the Cowboys making this trade?
Well, Kevin, these two sides have been in contact. We've heard Jerry Jones talking about the fact that a trade was possible. And finally, they were able to put the pieces in place last night. Now, here are a couple of things to consider. The Dallas Cowboys obviously wanted to upgrade their wide receiver position. They have acquired a receiver in the eyes of people in the Steelers organization who is as talented as any wide receiver in the league, bar none. That is how good and how talented George Pickens is and can be. The flip side to that is that he was entering the last year of his contract, and there was not a team in the league more desperate to upgrade their wide receivers over the last couple of years than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And a team as desperate as the Steelers were to upgrade their wide receivers still saw fit to trade George Pickens today in a pick swap, essentially acquiring a third-round pick in return for his services when he is unquestionably as talented as any receiver in the league, but also is headed into the last year of his contract.
Garage, jump in.
You look at like the Cowboys and the players they like to acquire when they go out in free agency or make trades. George Pickens, 24 years old. So if there are any issues that follow him from Pittsburgh, you have the ability to say to yourself, well, he's 24 years old. There's time to grow. There's time to change, get better at the things he needs to work on. It's a one-year commitment, as Adam says. But the Cowboys, we're talking to a lot of different teams about different wide receivers before the draft. The draft happens. They don't really get one. I think if Teteroa McMillan had been there at number 12, then the Cowboys may have taken him, and this trade may never happen. But once they come out of the draft without a receiver, the talks pick back up. They're willing to pay a little bit more, go up to a third-round pick for George Pickens, and they get him for 1 year, and they'll see. If they extend him, I think that would be a surprise at this point. But it doesn't mean he can't be there long term if he shows up and produces for them the way they hope he does this coming season.
Since trading Amari Cooper, they've been looking for a number 2 to join CeeDee Lamb, because when you look at the numbers, every defense knows cover 88, and still CeeDee Lamb has been fantastic over the last 2 years. How about over 2,000 more receiving yards than the next closest Dallas wideout in Brandon Cooks? That was the largest difference between a team's top 2 receivers in the league. Look at that gap disparity. And Marcus, let's bring it back here in the conversation. You're smiling because how does this change the offense for Brian Schottenheimer and Dak Prescott to have these 2 guys on the outside?
All right, Kev, I got my celebration out the way. One, everything that Lou, Shefty, and Graz said is important. The culture is going to matter. Yeah. And the culture is the players he's playing with. But on the field, it takes pressure off. Like, we've talked about this number 2 wide receiver position ad nauseum for the Dallas Cowboys, and they've been trying to fill in gaps and fill in roles and all of that stuff. I thought Michael Gallup back in a few years ago was trending towards being that guy. But what it does is it opens up this offense. Brian Schottenheimer talked about when he got the job that he wanted to become a more shifts in motion. He wanted to kind of innovate this offense a little bit and update it. And what you see now, especially look no further than your Philadelphia Eagles, Kev, when you have 2 real threats that are on the field, it makes defenses play you differently. And you win before the actual snap. So that's what I'm thinking. The excitement comes from that. Matchup problems. Who do we leave one-on-one when we double CeeDee Lamb? We have a guy that we know can win on the outside. Everything revolving around this George Pickens trade is ability, and is he going to bring a maturity that's needed in order to stay on the field and be available for games? If he does that, this offense is going to be a problem with those 2 guys on the outside.
Yeah, look, I remember Devontae Adams one time. I asked him the question. I said, what really defines a true number 1 wide receiver in your mind? Because we all have subjective opinions about what does that look like. And so quite honestly, George has exactly the characteristic that Devontae had told me at that time, which is a guy who can line up outside the numbers where the